And we're back again for another episode of The Horror Guys. I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're at, about 249 of these now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's almost a quarter of 1,000.
Almost. That's a heck of a lot of movies. What are we going to talk about this week?
Well, this week we're going to look at 4 more movies and a short film. Surprising no one. We'll start out with the brand new The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. Then we'll look at 2 very similarly named but completely unrelated films, The Relic from 1997 and Relic, without the in there, from 2020. And last, we'll look at the just-released film called The Goldsmith from 2023.
And then we've got a couple of bonus movies, Subspecies 4, Bloodstorm, which was just as good as the others.
Yep.
Again, we've commented before, and the subspecies movies are consistent across all of them. So if you like one,
if you like them, they're consistently good. If you don't like them, they're consistently bad. But they're all roughly the same quality, which is, I think, good.
And the first Final Destination movie, which came out in 2000. That's out there for your perusal.
It's 23 years old already.
Yeah, it is.
That's ancient.
And then they made some sequels that we're going to be watching too.
Eventually, yes. Yeah. And we probably should take a mention here that the Horror Guys Guide to the Films of Amicus Productions is now available. Yes, a new book. Amicus was developed in the early 60s to compete with Hammer. Hammer had done Dracula, Hammer had done Frankenstein, and The Mummy, and all kinds of good movies. And they were making the bank. So these 2 guys, Sabatsky and Rosenfield, decided, hey, we could do that too.
Yeah, they're doing it. We could do that.
So they set up this company called Amicus Productions, and they started doing horror movies too.
Not just horror movies, but a lot of heavily horror.
They did a lot of other things. And they only did, I forget the exact number now, 50-some movies. But in the book, we watch them all. We watch the horror movies. There's a couple of musicals. There's a couple of comedies. If you're a Doctor Who fan, they're the ones that put out those 2 Doctor Who movies that starred Peter Cushing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They liked Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing got a lot of work.
He was big in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, he was.
And they got some... do they have a Christopher Lee in there? I believe they did have a couple.
He was in one of the anthologies, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what they're really best known for is their anthologies. Mm-hmm. The 4 or 5 stories with a little wraparound story that ties them all together.
The Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt and its sequels, yes.
Yeah.
So check that out over at horrorguysshop.com or horrorguys.com and click on the little tab there that says books and follow the links to wherever you like to get your books.
Right on.
All right, what do we got first?
We got The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster.
She's angry.
2023.
She's black.
And she has a monster. So the title is not at all misleading.
Written and directed by Bomani J. Story. Stars Chad L. Coleman, Denzel Whitaker, Leah DeLeon Hayes, Riley Brooke Stith. Hour and 31 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. A brilliant person believes that death is just a state of disease that can be cured. So they set about bringing the dead back to life in their secret lab.
That reminds me of a story that I've heard before.
Lab bringing people back to life?
Where have I heard that?
You can't say the F word.
Using electricity.
You can't say the F word. It never actually comes up here.
It doesn't. There is an F, but it's hinted at. Yeah.
If that rings a bell, it probably should. It's a skillfully remade take on Frankenstein. Very, very modernized version of Frankenstein. And we both liked it quite a lot.
I thought it was pretty excellent.
Yeah. Well, what happens?
Well, Vicaria tells about her mother being shot, and then the violence spread, infecting her brother Chris. He died as well. And she is sick of violence and death. She lives in an area where this is not daily, but all too regular. There's gun violence and drug violence and
in the slums of a big city, in the getaway region, and there's lots of drugs and violence, and I think people do die there on an almost daily basis.
Well, in her immediate, satellite of people, it's not daily, but she's lost people, and she's angry about it. She's sick and tired of violence and death, and she says, if death is a disease, then there's a cure, and I'm going to find it. And credits roll.
Now, keeping in mind, she's probably 16 or something like that.
High school age, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we see that she's really into science and is extremely smart. She's also got a room with a locked door. She tells the little boy that it's full of bodies, some alive, some dead. She's just trying to scare him, right? Yeah, uh-huh. Well, we cut to school, where Vicaria annoys her teacher.
The teacher annoys her by calling her Vicaria,
Yeah.
which is what you've been pronouncing it.
What is the correct?
Vicaria?
See,
I don't remember. I'd be doing
which
it
way
too.
is which. So anyway, we apologize, movie makers, because we can't remember which way is the right way in the movie.
I'm pretty sure the obvious way is the not correct way.
Yeah. Well, the teacher has her forcibly removed. At the PTA meeting, the teacher comments on the family's last name, which is vaguely European.
They don't say it. They don't say the F
They
word.
don't say it, yeah. Donald, Vicarious?
Just go with it.
Vicarious father really chews out the teacher who called the police on his daughter. Well, we see her notebook, The Modern Prometheus, by Vicaria F. So what's the F stand for? Well, she goes to her secret lab after school, and she really is experimenting on dead bodies. Her brother Chris and other gang-killed neighbors. And there's kind of mentioned in the background, there's talk about, bodies disappearing, and, people got killed, and they're just vanishing.
The gangs kill them, but
after that.
The bodies disappear before the police show up.
And she's just like, la, 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 I know nothing, I know nothing. Well, she sews pieces of Chris back together. Later, that night, there's screaming and shooting again in the neighborhood. Jerome, one of the local kids, gets shot and dies as she watches.
I notice you're saying she now. You're not saying the name.
I'm self-conscious about it. As the EMTs try to shock the boy back to life, and it does kind of briefly work, but he's too far gone, too wounded. But she gets the idea that, hey, need to add electricity to her project. She quickly assembles a machine that really drains a lot of electricity out of the town to charge up the dead body in her lab. Zap. Zap. Yeah, there's much electric action. Is it alive? Is she going to say it? No, she doesn't. It is alive, but she doesn't say it like that. The classic line. She doesn't get to say anything, in fact, because the creature wakes up and knocks her out, and she's, zapped in the process. And, well, when she wakes up, Chris is there. He's huge and has dreadlocks. I'm going to show you who killed you and what's killing us, she says. She takes him to break into Curtis's car, which contains drugs, and that goes really badly for Curtis.
The boss wants to know what happened to the drugs. Curtis doesn't know.
Yeah. Well, in the morning, she's grabbed by Kango, I think it was.
Kango, yes.
Yeah. The main drug dealer in the neighborhood. They know she was involved in the drug heist last night. He threatens her. He wants her to work in his drug lab, unless she tells him who hurt Curtis, and she ain't going to do that. Well, Vicaria goes back to her lab to find the monster has broken out. Her friend Aisha has a daughter, Jada, who talks about her new friend, Chris. Well, Aisha was Chris's girlfriend, and Jada is his daughter.
Awkward.
Yeah. That night, Kango has one of his men follow Vicaria to Chris's former apartment. It's all boarded up. There's a peephole into Aisha's and Jada's apartment, and that's how he was talking to Jada, through the little peephole. And a couple of times we do see him peeping through. We just see an eye looking at him. Well, Aisha invites Donald and Vicaria over for dinner. They all argue about the system holding them all back. She can see Chris watching them through the peephole, and it's a little bit of an awkward dinner. Well, the police beat on the door, interrupting the meal, but Donald runs them off. They don't let the police in. Outside, the cops run into Chris and shoot him several times. Doesn't slow him down much. He pounds the cop into a pulp. Donald comes home from the party and finds blood in his kitchen. And thinking it's an intruder, he follows the blood trail into Chris's room and sees his undead son.
Surprise!
Yeah. Well, Vicaria goes to see Kango, who hears that Curtis has died. His lieutenant, Jamil, kills him in anger. Meanwhile, Chris kills Donald. Vicaria comes home, and she knows what happened. Jamil follows her, wanting revenge for Curtis, but Kango isn't actually dead yet and tries to stop him. In the middle of this, Chris shows up and feeds Jamal his machete.
Ouch.
Yeah, painful. That was an owie one, yeah. Well, Vicaria and Kango hide in the bedroom, and she admits she's the body snatcher. She thinks electricity that brought it back might kill the monster. So she runs to the lab for equipment while Kango tries to get to her bedroom for another piece of equipment they need. She runs into Jada, who has blood on her, and warns that Chris is coming. Kango drops off the piece of equipment but dies immediately. He also ran into Chris on the way there. She sets up the equipment just as Chris arrives. He comes inside and she fries him good. Well, Jada comes in and asks if Vicaria can bring back their family, the people that just died. And you can bring them back. I know you can, she says. And Vicaria thinks for a minute. Well, they are still fresh, and it should go better this time, right?
Right.
Yeah, the two get to work.
A lot less sewing if they're already intact.
Yeah.
Well, it's a modern, gender-swapped, racially tense update to Frankenstein. Little Jada is the creepiest kid we've seen this year.
Yeah, she managed to simultaneously be sweet and creepy.
The acting is good, and the situation is dire at best, and the characters are all believable. The only thing that really takes a stretch is the fact that a teenager in high school could bring back the dead. But on the other hand, it's also way out in the original story that an adult scientist with full medical training in a lab could do it. It's definitely not a new story, but it is a fun new twist, and I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just realized that it's a brand new movie and we're at the whole thing. Oops. Sorry.
It's Frankenstein.
It's Frankenstein. Yeah.
The monster's going to die at the end.
Yeah, the monster kills people and does stuff, and yeah.
Which takes us to The Relic from 1997, directed by Peter Hyams, written by Douglas Preston, Linnea Child, and Amy Holden Jones, stars Penelope Ann Miller, Tom Sizemore, Linda Hunt, and James Whitmore. An hour and 50 minutes. And it did kind of seem long, didn't it?
No, I didn't think so.
Okay.
No.
Well, spoiler-free, what happens?
It's not one to think about deeply. There are a number of points that don't really hold up to scrutiny, but those aside, did still manage to be a pretty entertaining movie. There's a story that pulls you along, the cast is good, the effects are decent, and it does entertain despite the faults. I liked it more than disliked it.
I did too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got some fairly harsh ratings over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to watch the other Relic movie that we're going to talk about later, and this came up in all my searches. So I'm like, we should do both to make it more confusing.
We should watch that, yeah.
Well, a photographer takes photos of natives during a fire dancing ritual. They cook up a pot of something that the white man drinks. He soon gets terrified of another man in a costume. It's some kind of drug. So yeah, this is all like in the South American jungle somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We then cut to the shipyard. John Whitney, the man from before, yells at the captain that the crates he's sending to the museum need to come off that ship right now. The captain refuses to unload the crates because he's got a schedule, so Whitney stows away with the crates. Turns out he's on the wrong boat, and his crates go a different way.
But
Oops.
They do still make it, eventually.
6 weeks later, Lieutenant DeGasta, a detective, shows up on the scene. The boat has drifted in, apparently abandoned in Lake Michigan.
And I had to look.
We had to look that up.
Yeah,
yes,
it is possible to get from the ocean to Lake Michigan. It's a thing. So, Chicago. No,
I'm sure it just accidentally drifted all that way, right, to Lake Michigan.
Well, part of the way.
Well, there's blood on the boat, but there's no bodies. He and Detective Hollingsworth find the bodies of the missing sailors torn apart. A week later, we follow a bunch of kids as they go to the museum. Dr. Green, an evolutionary biologist, is there, and Dr. Cuthbert stops her to mention that Green's grant is being delayed. Her academic nemesis, Greg Lee, is also up for consideration for the same grant. Green calls Lee a gerbil. He's a gerbil. Green goes into Dr. Whitney's lab and finds a bunch of crates. Dr. Frock explains that they came in by air freight this morning. There's a bunch of relics from a South American lizard god, and one of the crates is empty except for a bunch of leaves with little insect eggs on them. She takes a sample of the leaves, and the rest goes into the incinerator. Well, some of those kids we saw earlier have hidden in the museum until after it closes for the night. A Night in the Museum is a different movie entirely, but these kids are trying to do it.
Yeah, they are.
A big lizard thing then kills the security guard. Dr. Green sends her staff home and works there alone.
So
what happened to the kids?
The kids, well, they just kind of blend into the chaos.
Okay, they got away.
Yeah. And I was a little confused on how the crates made it there. Because the professor was saying the guy in the jungle was all upset because he changed his mind. He thought they shouldn't go to the museum, and he wanted them off the boat. And they wouldn't take him off the boat, so then he ends up going onto the boat with the crates.
I think there were different boats. The crates went on the wrong boat. Mm-hmm. He got on the boat that they found in the harbor in Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
The crates went to wherever it was they were supposed to go, and then they got air freighted to the museum.
All right.
2 different boats.
Okay.
If he'd got on the right boat, this might not have been a problem.
Maybe.
Well, the next morning, the 2 detectives show up to investigate the dead guard. Dr. Green was the last one out the previous night, so the cops want to talk to her. D'Agosta talks to Cuthbert about her employees. Green gives the detective a tour of the science areas of the museum, and he mentions that Whitney's office was vandalized last night. He was the guy from South America.
Mm-hmm.
They go in to look at the relic that came in the crates, and it's some kind of chimera creature. D'Agosta goes to the morgue. The medical examiner thanks him for sending in 7 decapitations this week. Oh my.
Yeah, all the guys in the boats had their heads ripped off.
They do the autopsy on the guard, who has been clawed by something huge even before he lost his head. The skull is empty. The brain is gone. Where did it go? Well, that night, Dr. Green wanders around in the new Superstition exhibit and hears something in there with her. No, it's not a monster breathing heavily. It's just a cleaning woman with asthma.
It was a tense moment, though. She's hiding in the bathroom, and she comes in and uses her inhaler. It's all right.
Cuthbert and D'Agosta talk about the big fundraiser party that's coming up later tonight. The police are still searching the building for the murderer, and they find some bloody footprints. Hollingsworth reports that all the dead men on the ship were missing their hypothalamus, just like the dead security guard. The detective then talks to Dr. Frock about Whitney's work. The cops find and shoot a man in the basement. Turns out he's a convicted rapist, and he's got the dead guard's wallet.
Case solved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except it's just a coincidence.
Uh-huh. That's what D'Agosta thinks.
D'Agosta doesn't think he's the murderer, and the mayor calls him and orders him to let the gala go on tonight. A bug got into Green's leaf samples, and it grew huge. A giant bug. She talks to Dr. Lee, who says it's got the DNA of a beetle and a gecko that have somehow merged.
Mm-hmm. Something to do with them leaves.
Yeah. The party at the museum begins. The mayor and his wife are there, as are Mr. and Mrs. Blaisdell, the big money donors. Meanwhile, the police are still searching the basement with dogs in case there's someone else down there. Well, security wants to shut down the lab area where Green and Frock are working. Lee tells them there's no one there, so they lock all the doors. Lee did this on purpose, knowing they were in there, trying to keep them out of the show.
Uh-huh.
Lee then monopolizes the Blaisdells for his grant speech. He's a gerbil.
He's a sleazy gerbil, yeah.
D'Agosta learns that there are old tunnels underneath the museum that lead all the way up to Lake Michigan, where that boat was found. Because every museum needs that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Uh-huh. Full of tunnels.
I'm sure all the museums have, catacombs underneath.
Yep. The good ones do.
Well, the search dogs run ahead, but something kills them. D'Agosta, in the tunnels alone, finds a whole nest full of skeletons. Hollingsworth then runs upstairs to shut down the party, but they're all in the Superstition wing looking at the Cathoga relic from Brazil. Suddenly, a dead body falls into the exhibit, and everyone panics.
Yeah, it's all good fun till a body plops down in the middle of the party.
Yeah. The alarm goes off, so the security people watch as all the doors close in an emergency lockdown. The whole power grid shuts down. Why?
Yeah, this chaos doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. Yeah, and we discussed that in the commentary.
A body falls down and
body-
people start stampeding out.
Yeah,
Why would the doors shut? Why would the sprinklers go off?
that made like everything go haywire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these massive security doors come down.
That no one has a key to open.
And they can't open them again. Like, what do you mean you can't open? From either side, there's no manual open from either side.
And all the employees are there. The security guards are there. Nobody can open these doors.
Nobody can open these doors except from the central control.
Which is stupid.
Which is about to run into trouble.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's pandemonium as the partygoers break windows and generally stampede like lunatics. Some are trapped behind those security doors.
Yeah, quite a few people made it out before the doors came down.
But a lot didn't.
Yeah, so they go screaming down the front stairs and out of the building.
The building engineers go to check out why the power went out and find that the generators have been trashed. It's a smart monster. Before long, the engineers have been trashed as well. DeGosta tells Hollingsworth where to go, and he's supposed to leave everyone outside through the tunnels and the basement. The Blaisdells decide to stay put and wait it out.
So the monster, this is another point where...
It's one of those monsters that's everywhere it needs to be.
Yeah, exactly. The monster dropped the body and then instantly destroyed the generator and then instantly was in the control room where the guys were.
And the tunnels.
And traveling at the speed of plot.
And basically. Spoiler, there is only one monster.
Yeah, and we were thinking for a while, there's a bunch of them. They're everywhere. And no, it's just
no,
one.
They're just everywhere.
Traveling at the speed of light. Yeah.
DeGosta finds Green and Frock in the tunnels, and they all see the lizard monster clearly now. Green talks about the leaves, the eggs, and the virus that came on them. It's probably just a local lizard that ate those leaves. Frock explains how the old-time natives used the leaves to defeat their enemies. They'd send a monster that they created, and then go into hiding until it ran out of enemy brains to eat, and then it starved.
And then
that seems a little uncontrollable, don't it?
A little bit, yeah.
She does some tests on the creature's blood and says it's probably still evolving. Meanwhile, the monster attacks the mayor's group in the tunnels, and it kills the security chief and one of the cops. Dr. Lee tries to sneak away, but it gets him as well.
Weasel.
It likes gerbils.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the SWAT team breaks in through a skylight, and they're all immediately eaten.
Even though it was just in the tunnels.
Oh, hush.
Under the museum. Who knows how far away. And then, boom, it's right there at the skylight.
Well, when it attacks the SWAT team, we see that Cathoga can climb the walls. It then eats Dr. Frock. Green says the creature has a lot of human DNA, and it may have started out as a human and then evolved into a monster. DeGosta and Green make their way through the tunnels, and the monster's right there with them, under the water.
Back in the tunnels after killing all the SWAT people.
It's one of those, they got to walk through 4 feet of water, and there's a creature under there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Hollingsworth gets the mayor, Dr. Cuthbert, and some others out safely. Green goes back to her lab, and the computer finally reports that the monster is actually John Whitney, who has become mutated. The monster chases her through the back rooms and the labs of the museum. She pours all kinds of flammable things on the door. You see, we were talking earlier about the 2 boats.
Mm-hmm.
The man got on the boat. That's the one that brought the monster through the tunnels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the relics came the normal way.
And he was the monster, yeah.
The monster approaches, but takes time to lick her all over.
Ew.
Ew? Because Whitney liked her, I guess.
Yeah. Ew.
Well, she throws her bomb and traps the creature in the now burning lab, and the monster explodes excessively. Well, the mayor shows up and sticks up for DeGosta, whom he's been yelling at throughout the film. He's my buddy now.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, DeGosta lets Green out of the water tank she was hiding in, and everything is fine.
It's fine.
Yay. It's a monster lizard, huge, strong, and tough, but doesn't have any kind of magical or supernatural powers. So how or why would the museum's computerized security system, the doors, and the sprinklers all go off when the power fails?
Because plot.
There's a lot of things in this film that make no sense at all. Security doors that can't be opened manually from the other side, even by the fire department?
Yeah, the fire department finally comes and cuts their way through these big doors.
With a torch, yeah. That's just not real.
Yeah.
Well, the creature seems to be in multiple places with 0 to little travel time, making us think for a while that there was more than one. And no, it's just one. Speed of plot.
Yeah.
It's quite long, but moves along pretty well and never takes the time to get boring. The acting is decent enough, and there are a lot of familiar faces in the cast. Well, they were hanging those leaves in the sewers as bait.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what's going to happen when the rats eat them.
Fun things.
Or the big fish, or whatever other lizards might be down there.
That's where the sequels come in.
There weren't. Were there any?
Isn't there one?
Oh,
isn't
there
one called
were.
Reliquary?
You're right. Yes.
Reliquary?
No, I think that's something else.
Oh, that's something else.
I think
That's
there is a
with the
Relic 2 and a
cockroaches.
Relic 3, though.
I'm thinking of the cockroaches one.
Too many relics.
Yeah, which is not this. Yeah.
It's pretty entertaining as long as you don't give it 3 spare brain cells. Yeah.
Just sit and be entertained.
Give that one an inch, it'll take a mile of brain cells. What's next?
Relic from 2020.
Yeah, the previous one was The Relic. This is just Relic.
Directed by Natalie Erica James, written by her and Christian White. Stars Robin Nevin, Emily Mortimer, Bella Heathcote, and Steve Rogers. Runtime's an hour and 29 minutes, and there's a trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler free. This was slow and chilling, with a deep sense of dread that lingers through much of it, and some outright horrifying moments. Is it all just a metaphor, or is it literal? Some of both, maybe. It's interesting to think about afterwards. It is well made, and we liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's a good quality for a movie to have that makes you think afterwards.
If you're thinking about it for a while afterward, that usually makes it a good thing.
In a good way, not like The Relic, where you're thinking,
man, that was dumb.
Yeah, and then you think of more plot holes the more you think about it. No, this one was. And another, praiseworthy difference, it was slow, but yet not boring. There's movies.
There's movies that are slow and boring.
Yeah, it's a subtle thing.
Movies that are short and boring.
It's a subtle thing sometimes but they can manage to be slow and still drag you along and keep you interested.
This one builds as it goes.
Yeah.
Well, what happens?
Well, we open on a flooding bathtub. The water spreads across the floor and down the steps. It eventually stands to where Edna is standing, naked, with her back to us, in the living room. And credits roll. Edna's daughter and granddaughter, Kay and Sam, arrive at the house. The neighbor calls, saying he hasn't seen the old woman in a few days, so they're going to do a check on her. They go inside. They find fruit in the bowl is rotten. They do expect to find her dead, but she is nowhere to be found.
No, she's not dead. She's just not there.
Yeah. Well, Kay goes to the constable and tells them that her mother is in the 80s and forgets things. Meanwhile, Sam searches the house more thoroughly. Her grandmother is quite a hoarder. Kay and Sam talk about their jobs and mundane stuff. The next day, the police set up search parties to comb the woods for Edna.
The shirt party would be more fun, wouldn't it?
Search party, yes. Well, they don't find her, make plans to continue the search tomorrow. Jamie comes by that night and talks to Sam about Edna. Is Jamie the kid? Or is that the neighbor guy? I don't remember who Jamie was for sure. Well,
I don't remember now.
Yeah, their names. Anyway, Kay talks about Edna being worried that someone was coming into her house and moving things around. But she just dismissed that as an old woman forgetting things. Well, Sam puts on her grandmother's sweater and finds a note in the pocket. Don't follow it, it says. Yeah. Kay finds tapping coming from inside the wall, and that night she dreams of an old man dying alone in a cabin. Well, the next morning, Kay and Sam wake up to find Edna's back in the kitchen making tea, just like everything's normal. And she's filthy, but otherwise she doesn't have much to say, and she keeps changing the subject when they ask where she was. Well, the doctor looks Edna over and asks about the bruise, but Edna says she must have fallen. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with her. I suppose I went out, Edna says.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. Well, Kay knows that Edna's mind is failing. There's Post-it notes everywhere, and the old woman won't say where she went. Kay shows Sam a drawing of a cabin from her dreams. Her grandfather died there. Their current house is using some of the same windows. Kay mentions putting Grandma in a home. Well, late that night, Kay goes downstairs to see Edna having a conversation with no one. It's here, under the bed, Edna says. There's nobody there. Well, Kay goes to a nursing home to talk to someone there. Her mother would be in a depressing facility in a depressing room. Back at the house, Sam realizes that Edna does have issues, even if she seems fine most of the time. And Edna gave her a ring, a very valuable family heirloom ring, and she's wearing it. And then later, Edna accuses her of stealing. Completely has forgotten she gave it to Sam.
That kind of thing happens a lot with dementia.
Yeah. There's some clear signs there that Edna's got issues. Well, Sam volunteers to move in with Edna to watch over her, but Kay thinks that's a bad idea.
It usually is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Even when you're not in a horror movie.
Yeah. Kay dreams about her grandfather's cabin again, and this time she sees Edna fall over dead and rot from neglect. Kay later catches Edna trying to eat some old photos. She says she's afraid of the window in the living room. Just issues of dementia,
Is it, though?
Yeah. Jamie is the kid. He's a young man with developmental issues who lives next door.
The next-door neighbor kid, yes.
Yeah. Well, Sam asks Jamie's father why he's not allowed to visit Edna anymore. It's because Edna forgot they were playing hide and seek. She locked him in a closet and left him there for hours. So Sam checks out that closet and finds a secret room behind it. And it turns out there's a whole bunch of rooms hidden in there. But there's no way a house that size could have that many secret rooms and hallways.
But it does.
Yeah, she starts going in there and she can't find her way out, and finds many disturbing post-its and notes written on the walls.
Grandma spent a lot of time in this crazy maze.
Or did she? Yeah. Well, that evening, Kay and Edna have no idea what happened to Sam. She's still lost in the tunnels. Kay sees that the bruise on Edna's chest has gotten much larger. Edna then goes on a rampage, smashing things around the house. And the walls and floors are literally closing in on Sam. She finally kicks a hole in the wall, which leads to more tiny rooms. Outside, Kay finds the same closet, and she starts to explore. She finds Edna in there, but Edna is literally falling apart.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's some gory, gross effect. Yeah. Kay runs into Sam and warns her that Edna's not Edna anymore. Well, Sam breaks a hole in the wall. Everybody gets out into the real house, unfortunately, including the Edna monster. Kay whacks it a couple of times with a wet lead pipe. Kay remembers her grandfather dying alone and refuses to leave Edna, but she does lock Sam outside. Kay carries the old woman upstairs to her bedroom. Her skin is peeling off, and Kay rolls some of it back to see what's underneath. Her hair and scalp peel off next.
This is all pretty gross at this point.
Yeah. And then Kay basically peels off the rest of her mother. Sam finds a way inside and is shocked to see what her grandmother has turned into. But all three generations lay down on the bed, and Sam notices that Kay has a black spot on her back.
Uh-oh.
Just like it started with Edna.
It runs in the family.
It does.
Well, it's well filmed, and the acting is good all around. The house is dark and creepy, but it's still a modern-ish house. It's not an old haunted place or anything.
Mm-hmm.
The creature effects don't come into play until very near the end, but they are decent. It's more metaphor than monster here. As far as I can tell, the point here is that dementia is a disease that eats you up until there's nothing recognizable left. Places that are familiar get confusing and start to close in on you. Also, it runs in families. So Kay and eventually Sam are going to go the same route.
And grandfather did, apparently, too.
Yeah, he wasn't quite right
Edna's
either.
Father, yeah.
Still, it was pretty entertaining, so you really don't know what's going on until it's done.
And it was cool because, it's the literal dementia going on, but then there's this weird stuff, and you wonder, is this weird stuff real?
Well, eventually real weird stuff happens, but even then, a lot of it's kind of metaphorical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. We liked it.
Yeah, we did.
Did you watch any short films this week?
Yeah. I saw the madcap comedy Maria, Jose Maria. Brand new.
Not a madcap comedy.
Okay. Was not. It was pretty horrifying, but there were some mild comedic elements to it.
I remember one little giggle.
Okay. Mild.
Directed by Chico Norris, written by Timoteo de Azevedo, Miguel Raimundo, and Chico Norris. Stars Nuno Aljo, Eunice Correa, Andre Gago, Pedro Luzindro, and Jose Nito.
And as you might guess by the title and those names, it is in Spanish.
It is.
With English subtitles.
20 minutes. There's a trailer in the show notes. This is still doing the festival circuit, so you can't watch the whole thing online yet. But you can keep an eye out for it.
We were privileged to be able to see it and review it.
What happens?
Well, it starts out saying based on a true story.
And, most movies that say that are just crap. That's not true. This one actually is.
Usually automatically turns me off, but this one was quite good. It didn't turn... I have an initial bias whenever I see that, but it redeemed itself quite
like The Conjuring.
It was very good.
Based on a true story. Oh, bull. It's a made-up story. This one, however, is actually historical.
Yeah. A policeman checks out a beheading victim. It looks like a professional did it, possibly a butcher. He finds something else, possibly a clue. And a woman wakes up to find blood in her bed and calls for her mother, but she cannot find her anywhere. She goes to church to pray for forgiveness and talks to the priest, who asks her if she wants to confess anything. She admits that she's no longer chaste and that God is ready to punish her sins. The priest later talks to the policeman, and the woman later complains that the devil is haunting her. Well, is she crazy or is she right?
The high contrast, black and white, gives it a very old-timey, classic feel. It looks really good in black and white.
And it did happen in the long ago, so it's very appropriate.
And the locations add a lot to it as well. The music sets the mood, and we're not quite sure what's really going on for a long time. We were kind of just about to give it up as not completely making sense when the final title cards at the end explains the historical significance of the story, which cleared it all up. And it's a very interesting look and style choice here. Definitely worth a watch if you get a chance to see it.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it and check it out if you can.
Yeah. And then we move to our brand spanking new movie this week. Just came out on Thursday. The Goldsmith, 2023.
And we won't spoil this one very much.
No, we're not going to read the whole thing on this one. If you want to read the whole thing, go to horrorguys.com, and the spoilers are there. But we won't cover too much of it here. This one is directed by Vincenzo Ricciuto, written by him and also Germano Terracone. Stars Giuseppe Pambieri, Stefania Cassini, and Tanya Bambacci. And if you couldn't guess...
It's another international film.
It's Italian.
Yeah.
89 minutes. There's a trailer in the show notes. Spoiler-free, what happens?
Well, we suspected right from the beginning that this wasn't going to be a simple crime. You can kind of get that from the preview. And there was a good bit more to it than we expected. And then it went even further than that.
Yeah, if you watch the trailer, you're going to see that it's about a crime gone wrong.
Uh-huh.
But there's much, much more to it than that.
The cast was good, the gore effects were realistic, and the story moves well. We really liked it.
Yeah, this was actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be when it got started.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Well, some kids run through an abandoned building, pursued by an older man with a beard. It looks like the kids have stolen a gold cross from the man. Things escalate, and the little girl, these are just like 10-year-olds, stabs the old man, and credits roll.
These are bad people who grow up to be bad adults.
Yeah. Antonio's wife nags him about giving someone that we don't know about another chance, but Antonio says the kid is a deadbeat.
This is an older couple.
Yes. Antonio and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
He can learn about the craft, but he's no artist, we're told. As these two old people talk, 3 younger ones are hanging around outside, waiting for the oldsters to go to bed. Stefano is clearly the leader, and Ariana likes him a lot. The guy in the backseat of the car is the one who came up with this particular plan, and they are the 3 kids we saw earlier, all grown up now. Well, the 3 get out of the car, put on masks, and take weapons out of the trunk. It's time to go inside. They pick the lock and disable the alarm. They disabled that alarm way easier than it should have been.
They knew the code.
Oh, okay, right.
It was an inside
Somewhat
job.
inside, right.
Uh-huh, yeah.
They spread out, exploring, looking for the old man's lab. They can't find it, but Roberto loses his patience and goes upstairs to find out where it is from the old man himself. They burst into the old people's bedroom and torment Antonio's wife, Giovanna. Finally, Antonio relents and says he'll show them where it is. Antonio asks, "Are you sure you want to go in?"
He does give them a chance.
He leads them into a secret door that slides open. Inside is all the jewelry and tools. Antonio is a goldsmith, and there's a lot of goodies in this room.
Yeah, it's like his own private jewelry store.
Stefano and Ariana tie up the old folks, and then the three head for the gold room to loot it. As they load up their bags, we notice the door is closing behind them automatically. That door was on a timer, and now they're locked in.
Oops.
Oops.
We should stop it there.
We should stop right there, yes.
Uh-huh.
But again, there's more to it than what we just said.
Yeah, there is. It's more than just three crooks being locked in a room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they break in, they're wearing these big baby face masks. And I thought they would look really cool.
Yeah, they do.
But I can't imagine it'd be easy to see anything, especially in a dark house. There's a reason most people just wear the stocking mask when you're breaking in.
Mm-hmm. Visibility.
But if you're breaking in a movie, you got to look cooler.
Yeah, they do look cool.
Well, there was a lot of backstory here that we didn't get until the very end. And even then, not everything was explained. The acting was good. There is some well-done gore, but not as much as you might expect. The pacing and camera work are excellent. Mostly we're held in suspense as we wait to see why this is all happening.
And it is explained.
It is, yes. And overall, we liked it quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it was my favorite of the week.
It's weird, and yeah, it's my favorite of the week, too.
Yeah.
Although I like the Relic, too.
I liked them
Well,
all.
the Black Girl and the Monster, they were all good.
I liked all four of them.
Yeah, none of the ones this week are stinkers.
No, they're all winners, and I like this one the best.
And that's all we're going to talk about completely this week over on HorrorBulletin.com, our weekly free email newsletter. We also looked at Final Destination back from 2000. Stars Devon Sawa, Ali Larder, Kerr Smith, Kristen Cloak, and Daniel Roebuck. And you know what this is about. Some kids cheat death, and then death wants a payback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Who's going to survive and who isn't? And yeah, the fun is watching.
How are they going to die, or are they all going to die?
What's going to happen? Yeah.
And we also continued on with Subspecies, where we watched part 4 called Bloodstorm from 1998.
This was the one that they basically filmed at the same time as 3. So it's a...
No, 2 and 3 were at the same time. This did come later.
Right. Oh, yeah. I'm mixing them up.
It's also known as Subspecies The Awakening. Stars Anders Hove, Denise Duff, Jonathan Morris, and Yona Abur. And it's a continuation of the series. Takes up where the third film left off and builds on more of the good stuff. The effects and makeup are great, and the story is entertaining. If you like the first 3, you'll like this one too.
This one introduces a new villain.
Yeah.
The Doctor.
Okay, and this is 1998 for part 4. Part 5 came out in 2023, just a few months ago.
And
25 years later.
It's a prequel.
It's a prequel where everybody's younger than they were.
But he's older.
Yeah. It's good. We liked them all.
But it made sense. I mean, Anders Hove, the main guy, you see him a lot in it.
He's mostly human in the 5th part.
Yeah, because it's before he became a vampire. But it makes sense because, the vampire power and the blood and everything would have youthed him up a little bit.
He looks younger as a vampire than he did as a human, yeah.
I think it fits.
It does. It's kind of weird, but if you think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, well, stop on it over at HorrorGuys.com or HorrorBulletin.com. Check out HorrorGuys.com for that. I'm getting too carried away there. HorrorGuysShop.com to pick up that new Amicus book or any of the older ones. Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, Roger Corman, Shock Theater, Hammer, whatever. We got a lot of them. Check them out.
Check it out.
And until then, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.